In fantasy RPGs, we're often told that wizards are characters that can see the world in a distinct way, that they can view the tapestry of the world, or they can perceive and manipulate mana, or anything along those lines. And this is what allows them to do magic, the ability to see and interact with this force that no other human can see. But then, when it comes time to actually demonstrate that this unique ability is true, what do we get? The player never gets to see this unique world, this strange abstraction. Instead, we're just given the ability to shoot fireballs at our enemies. And this is a real shame, because there's already a genre out there pretty much defined by how uniquely players can see the world, how uniquely you can interact with it, and one of the most often made criticisms of that genre is that the character doesn't feel like who they're supposed to be. They feel more like a wizard, and maybe that should indicate something to the fantasy genre. We could be doing something with this. If you've listened so far and are familiar with this genre of video games, you probably already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Cyberpunk. For those who are unfamiliar with the genre, Cyberpunk is a futuristic setting, generally, where a handful of corporations ended up taking over control of most of the world's resources, and the government cracks down on dissidents. Generally, there is lots of militarized police, and of course, Cyberpunk is most often shown through cybernetics, advanced AI, and of course, hacking. Hacking is really the thing I want to talk about here, though, because hackers in cyberpunk games are often likened to wizards. In particular, the games I want to look at are EYE Divine Cybermancy, which is a little less cyberpunk and significantly more Warhammer 40k. Watch Dogs, which is more of a modern cyberpunk, and of course, Cyberpunk 2077. Each of these games have characters with a lot of hacking abilities that I think represent a character who looked at the world very differently from everybody else. You see, in I Divine Cybermancy, there was magic in the game. It just so happened to be very generic magic, where you shoot fireballs at your enemy and turn them into demons and mind control people, and those can all be very fun. But the thing that felt more like magic was your hacking ability. You would have to slowly move through, stop frequently, go through this esoteric ritual with a weird menu turn-based minigame, and if you won, you could see through the opponent's eyes, or take control of their mind, or straight up kill them. When I play I Divine Cybermancy, the hacking makes it feel like I'm actually connecting to this person through a third source, like there's something going on. To a degree, you could say that it does feel like hacking, but to me, this is what magic feels like. You open yourself up to the world, you perform these strange rituals, which are kind of hard to understand, though once you get an understanding of the hacking in EYE Divine Cybermancy, it can be pretty fun and pretty easy. And even better is that it can lead to some severely wacky moments, things you would not think that simply trying to open a door would do.
On to the actual mechanics. You shoot stuff. You cyber shoot stuff. You shoot stuff with your mind, and you shoot your hacking prowess at ATMs and gain the Cyber Slav version of money. Or you don't. What is this? What is happening right now?
I Divine Cybermancy, with its hacking, manages to feel more like magic than its magic system. And that's because it has an actual system for its hacking. When you look at the magic, you point at an enemy and shoot, as it is with so many other games. But what you're told about magic in games is like, it comes through a conduit of hell, or it's the natural energy of the world being pulled through your character and out the other side in the shape of a fireball or something. But you never get to feel that, or you rarely get to feel that. Imagine if there were opportunities in a fantasy game where you had to make it past a ruined door, and it came up with a hacking game like in I Divine Cybermancy. Maybe not exactly the same. I'd probably have it using mana or some form of elemental magic mixing thing you have to do in order to dispel the magic trap. Honestly, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. And it would make the whole event feel a little bit more magical, especially if you've got nice graphics and sounds going along. Cyberpunk takes another step here, in that you can move around the world without moving. I'm of course talking about the camera hacking ability. The ability to hack into cameras and sort of use their position to initiate hacking on enemies. This is a fairly unique ability in video games, and one of the things that I imagine the fantasy genre could do a whole lot with. This makes it feel like your character is able to detach from themselves and start taking on a view of the world from other people or things' point of view. The ability to simply move around the world non-physically, all while still being in a physical location. You still exist. This makes it feel like you're a ghost almost, or some sort of omniscient wizard. Being able to launch your hacks, your quick hacks and your combat hacks and all of that from this position makes it feel like you are integrated not just into your singular body, but into the objects around you as well. This really does push the feeling of being a wizard, and I'm not the only person who thinks so. If you listen to reviews on the game, you can hear that other people clearly think the same thing. And sure, that may not be great for Cyberpunk, but that could be great for other fantasy games or other games with magic systems. Even if it was done differently, something like you can see through the eyes of enemies, or you can only see through ghosts, or gems in treasure piles or something. Something thematic to connect your character to would make this a really interesting mechanic, making your magic mostly direct things that occur on the enemies themselves or on the target themselves. Makes for this much cooler feeling style of magic, even if it is mostly setting your opponent on fire. But you can go well beyond that. Actually, my third example, I think, does a really good job with visual representation, and of course, also has the remote hacking ability, that being Watch Dogs. In Watch Dogs, the first game, you play Aiden Pierce, who many people refer to as a wizard with his magic wand, and it's not hard to see why. This is a man who can black out entire city blocks with the mere click of a button. He can manipulate his physical environment, blow up helicopters, and all of this merely with his cell phone in hand. Honestly, Watch Dogs is so ridiculous, but I do love it. But I want to talk about a little thing that Watch Dogs does that sets it apart from everybody else. You see, when Aiden pulls out his cell phone, a weird graphical flourish occurs. You see him become connected to every hackable device nearby. Aiden can clearly see and sort of feel for every object he can interact with his magic, as it were. This shows a character who is uniquely connected Sure, in Cyberpunk you can get the special IO vision that lets you see everybody you can hack, and in EYE Divine Cybermancy, you can go into the menus to see everybody you can hack, but Aiden feels like he has a physical connection to these things, because the graphical layer of the game shows you that. You pull out your cell phone, and you have these lines connecting you to everything nearby. Stoplights, people, bollards, bridges, everything that can be hacked. It was a really interesting moment when I noticed this, because that, to me, is what made Aiden feel like a wizard. Sure, the hacking being merely the click of a button to black out entire city blocks, that'll make you feel like quite the wizard. But it was Aiden's unique connection to that world that really sold it to me. Now, you might think that I'm just taking all of these suggestions and I'm never going to talk about a fantasy game, but there is actually a fantasy game I think that does this almost as well as Watch Dogs, maybe a little bit worse. Because there is one fantasy game that with its magic system actually happens to make you feel the magical world, though not quite as well. This would be the Shadow of Mordor series. Both Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War have you playing as a man possessed by a wraith, a ghost of an elf who can now mind control people because of a special pretty ring that he has. And because of the wraith sight that you have, the ability to look into another world, you can look around and sort of feel for where the orcs are at the time. The wraith sight is a pretty neat ability, especially, I think, because it allows you to read your opponent's minds from a distance. You see, with insignificant orcs you're not generally going to, well, you don't. But when any of the significant orc chiefs come around, and you see them, from a distance you can just look at them and hit a single button and tell who they are and everything about them, what they're afraid of, what they're weak to, and all of that. You have this unique way of looking at the world, this unique layer of perception that makes it so that you, Talion, can see and interact with the world differently. Incidentally, it actually made it so that I kind of only looked at the minion orcs as obstacles to be vaulted over, because this is what the game told me. There were only a handful of orcs that actually mattered in the game. Everybody else, well, they were just an obstacle. I think that one of the lessons we could learn from the cyberpunk setting is to put a bit more effort into having our characters more connected with what they're doing. The hacking in these games isn't just an incidental feature. This is a big part of who these characters are. Aiden Pierce, V, and Space Marine number 47, whatever, they all have a distinct connection to not just their hacking ability, but the world around them. And this makes their hacking, or as I would call it, their magic, pretty unique and really interesting to play. Now, unfortunately, Divine Cybermancy can't really be beat with hacking alone. I would love to be able to do that, but you do have to kill things in order to level up in Divine Cybermancy, so that's a bit unfortunate. But I think it'd be interesting to have more games like Divine Cybermancy and more fantasy games that take inspiration from the cyberpunk genre in general. But yeah, that's just been sort of my thoughts on the cyberpunk genre. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please go ahead and leave a like on the video. Subscribe for more content like this whenever I can get past the anxieties and eventually actually put out more videos. Sorry about that. And also, leave a comment letting me know what you think of these games, and if you have played any of these games as a pure hacker or wizard or whatever you want to call them. I'm interested in playing Cyberpunk all the way through using only hacking, because that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm potentially going to do that over on my Twitch live stream at some point, but that's going to be it for now. In the meantime, though, just remember, nobody's cares. Thank you very much and good night.
You won't trick me! This isn't going to plan! The tides will turn when I find some backup!